Central Asia is an ancient land which inspired numerous legends and epics over the years. This is the place where the most mysterious secrets of the East are hidden. Many well-known talented people infused Central Asian countries with their beautiful creations. Our story is about its greatness and mysteriousness. The Kushan kingdom was formed as a result of unification of the existing Tocharian and Saka principalities on the territories of Bactria and Sogdiana, ruled by the prince from the Kushan tribe. It happened in the beginning of the 1st century AD, when a significant part of Central Asian territories was united under the head of growing Kushan kingdom, which would spread its power to northern India and eastern Turkestan, Xinjiang.
Основателями этого Кушанска были так называемые юэджи в китайских источниках. В европейских они именуются тахары. Эти юэджи под давлением...
The so-called Yuezhi, as they are named in Chinese sources, were the founders of the Kushan Empire. In European sources, they are referred to as Tocharians. Under the pressure of the Huns who began their expansion, Yuezhi had to move to the territory of modern Kazakhstan, to the river Ili and other rivers, valleys, but soon the Huns caught up with them, resulting Yuezhi to move further to the south, passing through Sogdiana and settling on the right bank of Amudarya. For centuries they lived there, uniting together into some sort of landowning communities. At the beginning of our era, one of the Kushan leaders, who had the title Yabgu, somewhere in Khaburistan region and in southeastern Afghanistan, seized power and established a small domain which soon became a kingdom. Inscriptions on the coins depict his rise. At first they called him Zaoyu, which means a leader in Greek, and Yabgu in Turkic, in Iranian, because there are different views on the origin of the word Yabgu. Then they called him a king and king of kings. So the history of the great Kushan state began with this person whose name was Kujula Kafizis.
Есть разные точки зрения на происхождение слова «ябгу». Вот. А потом царем. И царем. Вот с этого человека по имени Куджула Катфиз и началось Великое Кушанское государство.
Держава Кушанов была одной из самых великих империй этого периода.
The Kushan power was one of the greatest empires of that time. It included a great number of countries with different social structures. There were rich market towns with advanced slave-owning relations, productive agricultural regions with their freeholders organized in primitive communal households. There were also steppes inhabited by nomads. Formation of the Kushan state contributed to the advancement and spreading of slave-owning system throughout the country. The Kushans themselves, who were a rather small nomadic tribe, not much more than 100 years before Khatfidis I came into power, preserved many elements of their traditional lifestyle even after settling in Bactria. Kushan conquest resulted in unification of almost entire Inner Asia into a single empire founded by one of the local ethnic groups. The Kushan state had outstripped those primitive principalities which appeared in Bactria after Yuezhi's conquest. The Kushans expanded the irrigation system. The emergence of the largest channels in Khorasan, Sogdiana, Bactria and Fergana are associated with the Kushan period. Constant wars had probably resulted in an increased number of slaves. New cities were built, especially in the territory of India. One of them, Kanishka, still bears the name of Kanishka.
Они использовали местные кадры и очень быстро смогли влиться вот во всю эту систему.
They hired local people, managed to quickly join this system, and therefore ruled effectively. We learned about it from the sources, from the history of Masud by Beyhaki, who witnessed all the events he described. It's very important. For example, at the Ghaznavids court, this dynasty was also of Turkic origin. Local personnel was very important. They used their knowledge to support the state. Bayhaqi tells about the dialects when Masud switched into the Turkic language while talking to his associates, or they discuss something and say, "Our local people want to mislead." So it was a bilingual environment, and the main advantage of the new government was that it could effectively use local knowledge, capabilities and skilled workers.
Но главным, так сказать, достоинством вот этих вот новой власти было то, что она могла очень эффективно использовать местные знания, силы, кадры.
According to one of the theories, the Kushan kingdom was formed by the Indo-Iranian nomadic people, the Tokharians, Chinese USG, who migrated from the territory of modern Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region of China. Wikipedia. During the rule of Kanishka, 78-123 AD, the Kushan kingdom was in its heyday. The state expanded to the east and strengthened its positions in India. The capital was moved from Bactria to Peshawar. The Kushan kingdom was a theocratic state, with the king consolidating both ruling and spiritual power. He was the head of a state and the supreme priest at the same time. It was the state where rural communities played the main role, employing the slave labor. The complex administrative system was created, providing submission of all the territory to the central power. Each province was governed by a satrap who had a wide mandate. In the 1st-2nd centuries AD, under the reign of Vima Kadphises, the Kushan Empire reached its greatest height. The introduction of monetary reform increased the value of the minted coins. They began to mint coins with the name of a ruler on it. The coins were made of gold, silver and copper. The economy had significantly strengthened. It was mainly based on irrigated agriculture, handicrafts and trade. The improved mechanisms and tools provided technical progress. The influence of the local trade between nomads and residents of agricultural oases was more important. Nomads were bringing meat, wool and leather to cities' markets and purchasing agricultural products in return. The increasing role of international trade promoted the growth of international relations. In 1909 AD, the Kushan envoys visited Rome. The Kushans were portrayed on Trajan's column. The Kushan Bactrian legations visited Rome later as well, during Hadrian and Antoninus Pius reigns.
Кушанские, как показывают археологические.
According to archaeological findings and written sources, the Kushan kingdom, which existed in Central Asian region, in particular between the Amudarya and Sirdarya rivers, was a very developed civilization. Everyone knows it. We shall not even dwell on this any longer.
Это всем известно, об этом даже можно не останавливаться.
More than 100 years later, after Yurge's conquest of Bactria, the prince of Kushan, named Kyuju-ko, subdued 4 other princes and declared himself as the Kushan king. The history of the later Han dynasty. Consolidation of large territories within one state contributed to mixing of cultures. It was facilitated by the fact that peoples of Inner Asia spoke kindred Iranian languages. At the same time, different tribes and ethnic groups which were parts of the Kushan Empire had their original culture, meaning the state management required an official imperial language with a developed system of writing. The Aramaic language proved to be very important on the territory of Inner Asia. Many different systems of Iranian writing were based on the Aramaic written language. The syncretism was mainly evident in mix of religions on this territory. We can draw this conclusion by looking at coins of that era. Peoples of Central Asia worship different deities: local, Mithra, Anahita, Siyavush; Zoroastrian, Ahura Mazda; Greek, Zeus, Helios, Selene; Indian, Shiva. There was syncretic merging of deities of different ethnic groups which resulted in changes of images of local deities. Thus, Iranian and Central Asian Anahita merged with Greek Aphrodite. Influence of Buddhism increased since Kanishka's rule. He moved his capital from Sogdiana to Peshawar, Purushapura. Just like ancient Greeks and Macedonians, Kushans in India had to convert to Buddhism. There was no place for barbarians and conquerors in Varnas of Brahmanian India. On the contrary, the doctrine which addressed people regardless of their origin should have found its followers among Kushans. During the Kushan era, Buddhism was not the same. The teaching, which was formed as a result of protests of Indian population against inequality of rights based on social status and Brahmans' religion. In Central Asia, Buddhism have merged with other ancient cults, becoming one of world religions of that time. The symbols of Buddhism were minted on the Kushan coins, as it was before on the coins of some Greek Bactrian kings. For instance, images of Buddha were placed next to Greek inscriptions. Bactria was influenced by Buddhism the most. In the beginning of the 2nd century, Kanishka ordered to build a big Buddhist temple in Bactria. In general, Buddhism was widely spread in Inner Asia but didn't firmly root itself with wider population, having mainly affected the ruling classes. This explains its minor influence on local religions and later disappearance from the territory of Inner Asia.
В то же время, в это время сильно развивалась буддийская религия. Кушанцы, именно кушанцы, также стали
At the same time, the Buddhism was on the rise. It was the Kushans who began to spread Buddhism to the east toward China. During that period, many Kushan representatives traveled to China as missionaries. They even translated Buddhist treatises into Chinese. Many translations were made in Kucha, a place called Guizi in Chinese sources. Back then it was called Kushan. Now it is Kuchar, not far from Kashgar. That was when Kashgar, Hotan, Kusan, these 3 states became a kind of a bridge for spreading of Buddhism from the territory of Turkestan to China.
И тогда именно Кашгар, Хотан, Кусан, это 3 государства стало как бы мостиком для распространения буддизма из территории Туркестана в Китай.
His son, younger Joan, became a king and conquered India. He appointed one of his generals to govern the conquered territory. The Yuezhi then became extremely powerful and rich. All the kingdoms called it the Kushan kingdom. The Chinese Historical Chronicle.
Синкретизм нашел свое отражение и в искусстве кушанского.
Syncretism was also reflected in the Kushan art. Some monuments of this mix were preserved in Inner Asia, Eastern Iran and Northern India. This art is usually called Gandharan because most of its monuments were preserved in Gandhara region in northeastern India, where Kanishka's capital was situated, or Greco-Buddhist because it combines Hellenistic forms with Buddhist themes. However, the most proper term for it would be the Kushan art, because it was the art of the Kushan Empire, which appeared through the fusion of Inner Asian, Iranian, Indian and Hellenistic forms.
И эллинистических форм.
Realism in the depiction of human figures, which was characteristic of Hellenistic art, large Corinthian capitals, leaves of acanthus as the main element of ornament, serve here for decoration of Buddhist themes. Statuettes of Anahita from Khoresm depicting it in the form of Greek Aphrodite, Buddha images and bodhisattvas made in realistic manner of Hellenism, etc., are examples of the mix of cultures. A frieze from Ireton which decorated the outer walls of the building, possibly a Buddhist temple, with images of young men and women, musicians and garlanders, resembled the Gandhara monuments and also plays as evidence of the presence of local art traditions in the vicinity of Termes.
Арийцы, они очень гуманные были, цари гуманные были. Они относились к верованиям подчиненных с добром.
The Aryans were very humane kings. They were friendly towards religious beliefs of their people. Therefore, during the rule of Kanishka, Buddhist temples appeared along the caravan routes. Kanishka began to build temples in Peshawar and other places. All of India obeyed him because he patronized Buddhism. But it doesn't mean that he was a Buddhist. No. As an emperor, he just treated the people who were part of his empire with respect.
Все подчиненные, значит, народы, которые ему входили в состав его империи, он относился гуманно.
The Kushan's wives don't fear their husbands, for the Kushans put their wives above themselves. Armenian author Seuda Bardesyan.
Сохранился династический храм Кушанов в это Суркутале в Афганистане. Там есть письмо этого Канишки о том, чтобы какой-то был засуха.
The dynastic temple of the Kushans in Sarkutal in Afghanistan has been preserved. There is a letter from Kanishka about a temple which was left by people when its wells dried up during a drought. He ordered to repair the well, to resume the work of a temple, to return the gods, meaning returning the sculptures of gods which were taken away during the drought. In this letter there was also an order to switch from Greek to Aryan. The script would remain Greek, but the ancient Bactrian language he called Aryan. According to linguists' data, this language existed before the 9th century, after which it became the basis of the Dari language and the Tajik language itself.
Судя по данным лингвистов, до IX века потом стал основой вот этого дарийского языка и современного таджикского языка.
Literacy of the population and various types of inscriptions on coins, seals and documents. Greek, Indian, Harashti and Brahmi scripts, the Bactrian writing based on the Greek writing, the so-called unknown writing system were widely spread in the Kushan kingdom. Coins from Kushan were first discovered in the 20s of the 19th century. Most of these coins were made of copper, though golden coins were not uncommon as well. Historians haven't yet identified the rulers depicted on coins, nor the state they belonged to. Some coins also include images of deities from the pantheons of different peoples. The inscriptions on the coins were written in Indian or Greek letters, but the words themselves belonged to an unknown language. An attempt to decipher the enigmatic inscriptions on the coins was made by the British scholar Alexander Cunningham, who later became the head of the Archaeological Service of India. The scientist came to the conclusion that of all the inscriptions known to him, the latest ones are those written in Greek letters in an unknown language. The researcher managed to read the titles and names of three rulers: Kujula Katphises, Vima Katphises and Kanishka. Culturally, Khorasan, less than other regions, was affected by new trends that spread during the Kushan period in the territory of Central Asia. But there are also traces of Buddhism present in Khorasan, where archaeologists found miniature images of Buddhist stupas. However, in general, Zoroastrianism or some of its varieties continues to be the dominant religion of the region. Foreign influence in the field of art was much stronger. Kushan, Greek and Buddhist art was reflected in a number of subjects of Khwarezmian artistic handicraft. Northeastern agricultural regions of Inner Asia, Church and Fergana haven't undergone significant changes during the Kushan period.
It
was a large territory. During the rule of Kanishka, the most famous Kushan king, all of India submitted to Kushans. Eastern Turkestan, Xinjiang province, Fergana in Central Asia, Khorasan, they all were parts of this empire. At that time, there were 3-4 empires: the Roman Empire, the Parthian Empire, the Kushan Empire, and the Chinese Empire. There were 4 empires in the world. The Kushan government received large revenues from collecting customs duties. During the excavations of the Governor's General Palace in Bagram, archaeologists discovered a treasury full of goods from Rome, India and China, which evidently were received as a customs duty from passing caravans. Wikipedia. The Great Silk Road played a significant role in development of the region. Construction of new cities, establishing trade relations with India, China and the Roman Empire. Exchange of goods, accumulation and dissemination of new technologies and religions, and active exchange of information were the main functions of the road. The Great Silk Road has become a factor of rapid and effective growth and development for Central Asia. The Inner Asia itself had played a great role on the Great Silk Road. Its territories functioned as an information storage which disseminated new technologies of that time to other countries. That was the diverse life of the Kushan Empire during its heyday under the rule of Kanishka. But during the reign of his successor, the empire had shrunk, leaving only the Inner Asia and part of northern India in Kushan's possession. The rule of the next king, Vasudeva, as his name proves, is characterized by the growth of Indian influence on the Kushans. The Kushan rulers gradually became Indian kings. The Kushans' culture in India has been losing its Central Asian elements. All these contributed to the further weakening of ties between the Kushan kings and Central Asia.
и Средней Азии.
The consecutive 3rd century witnessed the beginning of the collapse of the great Kushan Empire.